Okay, great. We're going to get started. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for the National Career Development Month Alumni Panel. We're so excited to have you here with us tonight, and a special thanks to our College of Public Affairs alumni for sharing their knowledge and their time with us for this event. I'm Markia Nardini, the coordinator for Community and Employer Relations here in the Career and Internship Center. And we're just going to begin the night with introductions. We're going to move to a Q&A session, and then we'll have some open forum time for student questions or anything like that. So let's get started. Dan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Daniel Boley. I'm the career manager for the College of Arts and Sciences here at UBalt, but I will be serving as the moderator for our panel today, asking the questions of our lovely panelists. So I'm going to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about what you studied here at UBalt, what your current career trajectory or role is. And I'll start with Pat, and then we'll work to Wesley and then Melissa.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Pat Mickus. I am currently working at UBalt, but I finished my master's in public administration here about 10 years ago. So I've had a 30-year career, and UBalt's been a part of it.
You hear me?
Yes.
I'm Wesley Hawkins. I am the founder and executive director of the No Leader Project, which is an organization that provides services to Baltimore City public school students, as well as we work with returning citizens, individuals coming home from prison with children between the ages of 5 and 24. I graduated from University of Baltimore with my undergrad in criminal justice, and then I went on to get my master's in education.
And last but not least, I'm Melissa Martin, and I received my bachelor's, I think in 2018. At that time, it was community studies and civic engagement. I think now it's considered nonprofit management. And I left the corporate world shortly around the same time I graduated, and I founded a local nonprofit called Stanley Snacks for School Kids, and we supply snacks to public schools in the Baltimore metro area for kids who suffer from food insecurity and hunger. We are currently in 18 schools and serving about 7,500 kids a month. And it's thanks to UB that I left the corporate world and did this, and especially as we get into our questions, what I learned about myself and about the community. And in my education at UB, it was much more than that college diploma. And so it's important for me to share my story now.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. As you can see, a diverse group of individuals, group of lived experiences, diverse majors studied here at the University of Baltimore. So we're very excited to know that our students need these kinds of experiences, right, to get to hear these kinds of stories. So we're going to go ahead and jump right on into questions. And I'll continue in the same order to start. I'll let Pat kick it off for this first one, and then Wesley for the next one, Melissa for the third one. And as we go, since it's a smaller group of us, just each of you can provide your perspectives on each question. So the first question that I have is, what is something you did in your job search, whenever you most recently did, or in your career search, we'll say, that you believe set you apart from other candidates? Pat, you can tackle that, the initial question there.
All right. I'll actually point out two things. As I said, I've worked for about 30 years. Some in nonprofit, mostly in state government. And now here at UB, my position is to work with students looking at internships in state government, local government, and nonprofit. So careers in public service. Over the years, as I look for different positions, I think what helped me to stand out is that I was very specific about matching what I want and what I project in my resume to the position posted. So I think in my last search, I probably had 7 different jobs that I was applying for, different positions, and I customized the cover letter specific to the terminology used in that job description. And then secondly, I would include specific committees or projects that I did related to that position. So I was either looking for a policy and research position, or I was looking for a program implementation position. And so depending on where I was applying, I would customize the application. Wesley, to you?
I think for me, I know we, in college, we taught about internships, but a lot of students honestly don't take advantage of the internships that are actually out there. Internships are extremely valuable because it puts you in connection and it puts you in the space of the individuals who are looking to hire a high qualified, high energy, good, well-rounded individual within that field. But I would say outside of internships, it would be relationships. For me, it was building strong relationships with individuals who are in the field that I want to be at. So if they were having a forum where they would, come and discuss the work that they're doing within the community or with police reform or the state's attorney's office and things like that, when they come out in the community and the public, going to those forums and introducing yourself, if they have any type of community work that they're doing, introducing yourself, volunteering, trying to work alongside them. And I would just make sure I was heavily engaged. Also, my work that I do consistently in the community, it always involved working alongside a lot of the local government agents and agencies and stuff like that. So I built a lot of relationships with different individuals within those departments. So those would be my two strong things that I think helped push me in a different category, strong internships as well as strong relationships.
And I agree with those three ideas. One thing I think, especially in public affairs, is important is pointing out where you've volunteered and where you've given back to the community. The last job I looked for was probably older than most of you. So I think as I've moved on in my life, I agree, relationships and networking, we all know that they're the things. But I think volunteering, showing someone you're interested in the area you want to focus on. And sometimes it's a paid position and sometimes it's a volunteer and sometimes it's just, hey, can I talk to you about this? One thing I learned at UB was to have I called it a calling card, but it was a card with my name and my phone number and my email address on it so that when I met somebody and I wanted to make an opinion, first of all, I said my name 3 or 4 times so that they didn't forget my name. And then I always left with a card and said, here's my contact information. And of course, now I'm able to search for people that I meet, that I just get a name. And I always reach out to that person and say, it was so nice to meet you. In the future, could I call you if I had a question? I find in Baltimore, especially, that we're all connected somehow. And my organization may be this, but oh, wait a minute, Wesley's organization might need that. And it's all about leaving that impression. So no matter whether you're getting a paid job, whether you're getting a volunteer, whether it's just a networking, you want to walk out of that thinking they remember my name.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Wonderful answers there. And I saw that we started to get some questions in the chat. Just to be clear, we're going to save all those questions. And then at the end, we're going to actually have that open forum area. We'll address each of those questions as they go. Possibly some of them will get answered. But we're going to do that just for the sake of time. So the next question that we have is, how did you leverage your experiences at UBalt specifically in order to sell yourself as a quality candidate or professional? And for this one, I'll have Wesley start.
I would say again the work that I put in, even from a student standpoint. So when I was at UB, I didn't just come and go to class and leave. I had relationships and connections with staff members, with professors, and things like that. So even having those relationships with the professors on campus, they then in turn be having relationships with different agencies and different departments and stuff like that that can help make those connections with you and for you, or recommend or refer you to the right individuals. I've been a part of volunteering work at the campus. I've been a part of helping with events and stuff like that back before COVID happened. And when, the school would have stuff and reach out, I would make sure that it was things that I could take advantage of and be a part of and support the school just as well as they supported me. So I think, for me, it was more so I'm just strong and heavy on those relationships, because how I represent myself, how I carry myself, how I articulate myself, things like that matters in the grand scheme when you're conversing with individuals and when they're looking for high quality individuals. So when we have stuff on campus, me representing myself and being there, supporting it, being a part of it, and the work that I would do, then some of that stuff you can actually add to your resume.
I agree. And I think, again, making yourself present, we all have a lot to learn in life, and we're not going to learn it in the 20 years that we're attending school, or however long that is. So I think being open-minded, and remember that everybody has a presence to bring to the table. So my goal or my gift may be different than yours, but collectively, we can certainly make a difference. I tell, being from Baltimore originally, when people ask me what school I went to, it usually means high school, not college. Um, and it's funny because people will say, "Oh, I didn't know Woodlawn was a college." And I'm like, "No, I went to Woodlawn High. I graduated from UB." But I think knowing that you're from UB, which is the heart of Baltimore, and that I went there and that my heart was in there. I think that everybody, no matter what your relationship is, the minute you say I went to UB, if they're familiar with the school, they know that you learned in a non-traditional atmosphere. And that helps in any kind of job performance, because they know that you have skills that aren't just a textbook, a blue book, and a pen. So I think going back to, hey, I went to UB, and for me, in a lot of my classes, were professors that were out in the community. They weren't necessarily, I want to say, lifetime professors. And true transparency, my husband was a history professor at UB. So I have to say, most of my professors were not like my husband. And they were able to introduce me to people in the nonprofit world and to say to me, hey, you should read this or you should read that. So I think when you look at UB, it's such a benefit that it's a non-traditional setting, that you have a lot of professors that are out there, again, for me in the nonprofit world, in state government, who would say, hey, look at this or look at that. Hey, this is what happens here. So I think just knowing that we're in that type of atmosphere and using that to our benefit is a lot.
Yeah, I think when I got to UB, I was already working, and I used, we'd have assignments and research papers and whatever. And I really used those to tackle the issues that I think I wanted to do in my work. So I was focused on educational policy issues. And so all my papers were around different aspects of that. At the time, my kids went to a charter school. So that was it. I would go deep and do educational policy around charter schools. And then I'd go to the charter school meetings at night because my kids were there. So I was really connecting up my personal life, my community life, and my academic life. And so obviously now I don't work in a charter school, but I can tell you a lot about them. And in terms of like a method of looking at educational policy. So, and UB gave me the space to do that. They really wanted you to connect, make the connections from your academic environment to your future work or your current work, your volunteer work, your community engagement, whatever it is, go ahead and connect it, because you'll go deeper if you connect it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Melissa's point, I'll say one thing, it's always stuck with me that you know, starting at the University of Baltimore and working here, working with such a diverse group of students and staff members, one of the things that I heard somebody told me very early on was, if you can work at the University of Baltimore, you can work anywhere. And really what they meant by that was, you really did get to work with people from every avenue of life in a way that a lot of other universities really, that's not the norm as far as the experience. And I love what Melissa, the point she made of just, you're in the heart of Baltimore, right? And that means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but really at its core, I think creativity and diversity is a humongous piece of that. And that is something, you know, students here, I think, can definitely benefit from leveraging. Awesome. So the next question I have, I'm going to let Melissa start, is, in your opinion, if you're looking at two equally qualified candidates, what do you think would set one of them apart from the other as the ideal candidate? You could think about this from like an employer perspective.
So I managed hotels for a gazillion years. And there are two things that and I think I do this in my personal life. The first thing is, I think your ability to know you're going to make mistakes, right? So as an employer, you know, the person comes in on an interview, and we all do this, you know, what are your strengths? Oh, I'm a people person. Oh, I can type 100 words a minute. Okay. I want to hear somebody say, you know what? I'm going to kind of screw up at some point, and I need you to guide me to the next step, right? Because we know we're all making mistakes. And so I think somebody who's real, who can admit that they're real and that they have a lot to learn. Nobody's going into a position knowing everything, right? And so somebody who's real, it's funny because I read something recently and I thought, wow, we've used this word so often, but I think as a person, especially in what I'm doing now, I laugh when they say, oh, I'm authentic, but I think sometimes authentic doesn't have to be good. It has to be the truth. So coming into a position and interviewing and saying to somebody, look, I know what my strengths are, but I also know what my weaknesses are. And I also know where I have to grow. And again, being at my age, I'm like, oh, I can see where they are. And, you know, so I think that's important, knowing it and being honest about it. I think the best thing you can do is be honest, no matter what you are. In class, if I was behind on an assignment, I was truthful. Hey, I'm behind. I didn't get this. I'm researching that, versus just saying I just didn't do it. So I think sometimes being honest and being truthful are the best ways to get around it.
Pat or Wesley, either of you got any comments you want to follow up on for that?
Go ahead, Wesley.
Oh, okay. That was I like what you said, Melissa. I would say for me, as when I'm looking for individuals to fill a position and I'm looking to, you know, hire someone, it's knowing the background and the information on the position or the company and the work that's being done. But also not just knowing the work, but having a real understanding of, you know, why the work is needed. Sometimes, and this is just, you know, personal opinion and how I go by looking at certain staff is, you might know the bookwork piece of it, but do you know the actual real worldly aspect of certain things? And have you done enough background and research? And do you actually understand what is needed, right? And I'll give two different examples. I used to be, my very first career job, I was a correctional officer, and I worked at the Merle State Penitentiary. well, they call the MTC, the Metropolitan Center downtown, and I worked out Jessup as well with the women. But if you just go by the bookwork and how it's taught in class, but you don't actually do like some real conversation and research and connecting with correctional officers or other officers that can kind of properly explain and teach you and show those things, you'll go in with just like this bookwork type of mindset. But once you get into that jail, the real life experience versus what you just read in a book is a complete different and is a complete world, right? So if you have a connection with some correctional officers, if you don't know none, connect with some. If you don't have none of your network, reach out to some, have a conversation with them, right? Because just to be able to be more qualified, to be prepared, and be as engulfed in the understanding of the work of what a correctional officer is and what the duties are and what type of things that they deal with on a daily basis, sometimes it can have a higher impact talking to that individual versus just coming with the school knowledge. Second, I'll say, so, now I'm in a position of leadership at a nonprofit, and running a nonprofit, we work with a ton of different families and children and the community and stuff like that. You have to really come from a space of knowing the landscape. And what do I mean by that? A lot of the times we run into issues where it's not a problem that you came from a different state to get a career or work somewhere. But what happens in the disconnect, why some individuals don't connect with their position, is because they haven't connected or did the proper research with that community. So I'll give a deeper example. Say if you come from Ohio and you move to Baltimore to be a community liaison or community outreach specialist or some type of advocacy specialist, but you was good at that in Ohio. Ohio's culture and communities and neighborhoods and ideologies are completely different from Baltimore. So if you don't get to know what's going on in the actual community and what's going on the ground, and you don't get to know what's going on with the people, then there's going to be a large disconnect, and that's why it'd be a high turnaround with the positions because people are not being able to connect those ways. So those are my two, examples and two things that I feel like, people can do and make themselves a little bit more outstanding when you're going to connect or build with certain positions and certain paths of your career.
Yeah, and I would build on what Wesley is saying as part of that connecting, making sure that you know what it is that agency or that organization does. Like, do your homework. You know them. You've read their web pages. You talk to people who might have worked with them. You know them. And then when you get in your interview, make that connection. You have to tell them the story of you. They have to know a little bit more. They can read a resume, and you get two resumes and they both had great GPAs and they both took the same classes. That doesn't tell them anything. The way they get to, you tell the story of you by talking about what you did. It could have been a volunteer. It could be, hey, I volunteer here and I do this and I'm interested in that. And I did a research paper on this that really interested me. And that's why I think with your organization, I could grow. They have to feel like they've got a little glimpse into you. And that's the connection. That's one of the ways that they can connect to you.
Excellent. It sounds like the biggest thing that I'm really hearing is just like, don't stay at the surface level, right? Don't just treat it as, this is who I am. I am the person on the resume and I'm nothing else, right? Everyone's story goes a lot deeper than that. And I say this a lot of times to students, it's nobody can advocate for you better than yourself because you're the only person who knows your story as well as you do. So other people references, relationships absolutely go very far. And I totally agree with everything that everyone said. Like that is borderline essential, especially in today's workplace. But when it comes down to, I'm in an interview room, there's me, there's one other candidate, we got all the same qualifications. The person who can sell themselves better, that's probably the one who's going to get moved forward. Awesome. All right. So we're back to Pat on the loop around. So for this question, from when you graduated up till now, how have you seen the job market change and how so? And I recognize, like, I know, Pat, you were already working when you graduated from UB, but that can be from any element of your perspective.
Well, I'll just talk about Maryland, and there has been, and right now there is a huge number of openings in state government, local government, and in nonprofit. The state government in Maryland alone has 6,000 openings in different municipalities and state agencies. And they've opened up the way that they screen for employees. It used to be, oh, if you don't have a master's in this and you don't have this major and you don't have that, you would get kicked out of the computer system. You'd never even get an interview. At least in terms of Maryland state positions and local government, they've opened it up more so that they're not screening out based on particular degrees. So you might have a major in one area, but think about positions in sort of like the sister major, or broader, think broader. And I think that's one area of change that is very good for the graduating class.
I'll piggyback on that. Yes, it has changed. It has changed drastically, honestly. When I was in school, there wasn't a lot of positions as available as they are now. And that's due to a multitude of different things. The culture and the hiring force, a lot of careers and a lot of jobs and a lot of agencies are actually short, right? And they don't have enough people to cover the positions. So when I worked at the police department for the consent decree, which is police reform, the police department is undermanned by hundreds of officers. And there's a slew of different reasons why. When I worked in Baltimore City Public Schools, right now, from when I first started to where it's at now, a lot of schools are understaffed. And that's due to a lot of different things. One, COVID changed the market drastically because it put people in position where they wanted to have a career or a job or work from home now, because a lot of stuff has moved online. And if a job or career is not offering that type of online-based work, a lot of people haven't returned back to those in-office positions. So I'm not saying these things to discourage anyone when I'm talking about a career or a job that you're trying to look for. I'm saying it in a way of there's tons of positions available right now, tons and tons of them. It's just you going to apply and make yourself stand out. But to answer that specific question, yes, the market has changed. And like I said, I can go down a whole list of different reasons why it's changed, but it's completely different because people are looking for different paths and different things. Online has changed it as well when you're talking about social media, because social media is a different platform from, and I'm only 37, but when I was in, at UB, social media wasn't as big as it is now. So a lot of people who are on social media, they getting careers or building a platform or a name for themselves off of social media. And social media has blown people up and given them platforms where though they don't feel like they have to go after certain positions because there's social media. So those are my two responses. Yes, the market is different from when I was at UB, but there's a ton of different reasons why it's different. I'm not going to break them all down, but just to answer that question, yes. But I just would encourage people who are looking for different careers and paths, please apply because they need it. There's a ton of positions out here, and the more qualified and experienced you are, you can move up good. You can get your pay, you can get the benefits, and a lot of things like that.
And I am in a different, because I haven't worked in an office for many years. And I dread saying the C word, COVID, but I think back 5 or 6 years, people worked in an office. You didn't work from home, right? I told somebody today, a volunteer, that when I started working, okay, Wesley, over 37 years ago, I had to wear a suit as a woman, right? I had to wear a dress or a skirt. Um, so in my lifetime, and especially in the last few years, you know, everything's changed. People wear leggings to work. I mean, I live and work very close to Under Armour, right? It's it's casual shoes, it's casual clothes. So everything has changed. Teleworking, this Zoom, not being in person. Um, so it all has its benefits, but it also has its cons because you don't have the one-on-one personalities. You don't have the hey, Daniel, I need some help with this. Can you kind of look over my shoulder? Hey, Pat, can you train me a certain way because we're now teleworking and things like that. For me, it's very different because I work in a little nonprofit giving snacks away. So I'm in Costco and BJ's and warehouses and stuff like that. But I can see as a whole, it's not just the workforce, it's life has changed for whatever reason. So yeah. And progression, non-progression, you know.
Absolutely. I think those are all great points, and I would agree on all of them. I think we can all agree a lot has changed, in all kinds of different ways. Okay, Wesley, what do you believe is the most important aspect of networking, and how did you use it to get where you are today?
I think, throughout this whole time I've been on the panel, I've been expressing networking. So I think, networking is extremely valuable and is important because you build those bonds and relationships. See, I have a kind of an unorthodox path and resume because I was at a space where I was trying to learn and figure out what path I wanted to take. You have a lot of individuals who say, "Oh, I've been a police officer for 35 or 40 years, right?" Or I've been at the state working this position for 40 years. I don't, have that type of journey because I was trying to learn certain things about myself and get to where I'm at now. So I have worked in the Department of Corrections. I worked at the state's attorney's office. I worked at the police department. I worked for different nonprofits. I was a Baltimore City and DC school teacher at one period of time. I've worked as community specialist and outreach specialist and um, different nonprofits, just trying to figure out, okay, Wesley, what is it that you really want to do? Who are you? And every position I've had and, my young, time, I have built relationships with people. But those relationships help me do the work that I currently do now, again, as running a nonprofit that focuses on, a lot of holistic work with the community. So like I said, when I opened it up, the No Leader Project, a nonprofit that I started in 2012, but it became an actual official 501c3 in 2016. It has been providing those services in the schools and in the community. And with those relationships I have now, I have a large ecosystem where I can bring people together to provide those services. Or with the work that I've done with different agencies now, when individuals come to my program, I know where to refer them to. I know who to call. I know who to email. I know who to connect with. And I know who to talk to when you're looking for certain things. So, even though I bounced around for a while, I ended up landing and building a platform that works good for me. And it works good for me because I have those relationships. I have those connections. I have that information. And it helps me do the work that I do now because we do provide those referrals and resources and connections for people in the community. So that's, my response. Because again, everybody don't have a traditional path way when you're looking for a job and a career. And then my last point is, not only professors, but fellow classmates and students in the classroom when you go to UB. Because a lot of people, like Pat said, she was already working, right? So there's a lot of people at UB who are already in fields. There's a lot of people who are at UB who are already managers and leaders and directors, but they're trying to move to a different tier or a different level, so they can help you or support you or direct you. So not just taking advantage of connecting with the professors, but the student body as well.
Yeah, and I would add, networking is anytime you're with someone. So you could be on a team assignment, you could be on a Saturday cleanup in your neighborhood. You're standing next to somebody doing something, that's networking. And so you got to remember their name. You got to remember, how did I know that person? Oh, they're the ones who do this or that. Because everyone brings their story, their expertise, their interest areas. And you don't know, it might be 6 months from now, it might be a year from now, you're working on a project and you think about, oh, wait, I thought I knew somebody who was interested in this. Oh, it's so-and-so, let me call them. And actually, to Wesley's point, I was working at the Department of Ed when I was a student here, and there was a student in our class who had a very strong background in IT and cybersecurity. This is 10 years ago, and he was making a change in his career. A year later, we were doing a project on computer science standards in education, and I called that guy out of the blue, like, hey, do you remember I was in a class with you? Are you still doing cybersecurity? Who can? And he came and worked with us on some of our state standards in computer science. You just never know. Anytime you're with someone, you're networking.
I just want to say real quick, I like how that connected, Pat, because I didn't know that, right? I just randomly, like, just saying that you followed through with that story. So, but that's awesome. And that's how it works. Just being in a class with someone and building that relationship.
And I agree. And I think, and I'm going to point out Pat for a minute, because as she was talking, I realized I know her, not from UB, right? But I worked in a restaurant 18 years ago, part-time. Pat was one of our customers, and now it's like, and so I didn't know she was at UB, right? Look, the light bulb went off, Pat. But we have a lot of mutual friends. And so it's just funny, because as everybody's talking, again, there is something, and I will tell you, I adored Pat years ago and lost touch with her. But it just goes to show you, one of Pat's friends, I think, is now one of my good friends who helps me with my nonprofit, who is a general manager at a hotel, who, again, and I'm talking about Analia, it's all about who you meet. And you're right, at UB, or if it's out on the street, or for me, I was working part-time in a restaurant. And I will say, poor Pat and I did have a crazy mutual friend who kind of put you always together, and he was good at that. But I think sometimes it's just the relationship, and we call it, it's a fancy word now to call it networking, but it really is about, oh, wait a minute, Pat, I know you, you know me. Hey, this is what I'm doing. As I said in the beginning, I'm in 18 schools. And I will tell you, I started with 3 schools where I knocked on the door and I begged them, can I bring in snacks to your kids that are hungry? And I have never marketed Stanley snacks, never. And it's all because of networking. And this person's child is in a school where a classmate is hungry, and we're in 18 schools. So that is just an idea of what, first of all, telling your story, but secondly, saying, hey, I know this person who might be an IT person. I know somebody at UB who might be able to tell you how to further your education, right? So fancy word networking, but really relationships, and keeping a good old fashioned phone book with people's names and what they do. Best way to do it.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm definitely hearing across the board, right, is you have to be intentional about it. You can't, and I think that's a common challenge that I run into is with people, is the kind of like, a lot of times we kind of skate through life, right? We're focused on our own stuff, which makes sense. We're all very busy. We're all stressed, dealing with our own stuff. And it can be very easy to just not pay attention to those things, right? But it's when you're being intentional and mindful about your surroundings, about the people that you're interacting with, and what you hear them say that they do, that's when you start to find those opportunities. So especially if you're intentional about taking advantage and doing that, the initial part, the hardest part sometimes, which is the initial outreach, right? Taking that step to knock on a school door and beg them to let me bring snacks into their kids, or reaching out to the IT guy from my class a couple of years ago. So I think that's wonderful. And actually segues perfectly into our final question, and then we're going to open it up to the students in the audience. So a lot of students at UVault, Marquis and I can both attest to this, we've seen this from students a lot. A lot of them express both concern, nervousness, anxiety about networking, particularly when it comes to in-person networking. What advice would you have for those students? And Melissa, I'll invite you to start, and then I'll let Wesley and Pat take a stab at it as well.
First of all, and you mentioned this earlier, nobody can tell your story like you can. The other thing, well, there are 2 points I'm going to make. One is everybody's nervous. Everybody has anxiety. Everybody walks in a room of strangers. And if you can come out with 1 or 2 people you've made a contact with, you know, but we're all in the same boat, even at my age, even at what I do. My first school that I go to, my first visit, I always have to chew a piece of gum before I get there to calm my nerves, right? It's old cliche, but take a deep breath. Know you're the best you are. You have to sell yourself. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fumble. I recently called myself by the wrong last name. It happens, right? And you move on. You know that you're human. You know that it's going to, you're going to fumble, but we're all nervous, right? Even getting on this call tonight, I thought, oh, am I going to say the right thing? Will I, be able to say the right word? Will my phone ring in during the Zoom, right? It's all that kind of stuff. But you move on and you get by. And remember, we're all doing it. Everybody's going through the same thing.
Yeah, I would just say you got to do it. You got to just show up. I'm not terribly social, but you have to do it. There's a famous quote, I forget what it is, but like 90% of the equation is showing up. And even if you say to yourself, oh, you know what, I'm just going to observe. I'm going to go to the event, but I'm going to watch people. I'm going to stand in the back. I'm going to observe. That's progress. That's great. You get there, you show up, and then you let it go from there. But if you don't show up, nothing happens. And that's the worst. That's the worst, is that nothing happens. So just do it.
I'm gonna come from a little bit more of a raw stance. Sometimes depending on where you live or where you're from or what community you come from, certain neighborhoods and certain spaces, you might only go to a primarily Black school. You might only go to a primarily Black community, or you might only, go to a school that's primarily white or a white community or Latino. So now when you go to college or when you go to a workforce, college and the workforce is a little more diverse. Going to some of these events are a little more diverse, right? So sometimes we because of where we grow up, where we live and how we live and things like that, depending on your religion, your race, your financial status and stuff like that, all that stuff comes into play, regardless if people want to talk about it out loud or not. So when you are in a space now, some of us have these stereotypes about each other. And when I was young, first going to college, I had never went to school that had a large population of other races. Where I grew up was primarily Black. The school I went to was primarily Black. So it was like, now I'm at a school with a little more space that's a little more diverse. And you feel like you look at people you don't know, can you talk to them regular? Like I talk with everybody else, or how they communicate, or how they respond, or how they react. And I feel like a lot of the times people just don't talk about that, but it happens. It happens a lot. And I just would encourage to say people are people, regardless on if you Latino, you're Black, you're white, people are people. Have a conversation with them, connect with them, introduce yourself, get to know them, let them know you. Because you can look at somebody and think, oh, because he has, sweatpants and a hoodie on or something in the class. He could be one of the most brightest students in your entire classroom, right? Or someone could, have glasses and preppy pants and still not know how to read, write, or count. So, my encouragement is just to connect with people, open up to people, have a conversation, and just, deal with people about how you learn from them. Because a lot of the times it's nervousness because a lot of us don't communicate. Like, honestly, you can be in a room or a building with someone and you don't communicate. A lot of people get on the elevator together. You work on the 5th floor, we work on the 2nd floor, we ride in this elevator together. Nobody says hello. Nobody speaks. People on the elevator, nobody just, hey, how are you? How's your day? And stuff like that. Or we're fast paced and stuff. So, for me personally, I just, got out of my own personal way of being nervous and anxious and stuff like that, and just looked at people as people are people. Man, woman, child, elderly, whatever. Introduce yourself, represent yourself how you want to be represented. And just say hello. You never know. That conversation can lead to a partnership. That small conversation could lead to a new job. That person might know how to fix the leaky ceiling in your house that you have been trying to figure out, for a week. So that's my encouragement to all, the fellow students. I just will say, it might be a little, rough and you got butterflies in your stomach, but jump out there, take the chance. You never know how it might impact your life.
Absolutely. And I think one final point that I'll just throw in there that I think definitely, everyone here seems like we're really kind of getting to the same element is like, you need to be prepared to talk about yourself, but don't overthink the other stuff. They're people. You're all here to do it. You're all here for a purpose. But ideally, it's meant to be mutually beneficial, right? There's no reason to fear that, right? It's something that's ideally everyone comes out as a winner. So thank you all so much. I think those perspectives were fantastic. I loved all of those responses. I love getting to hear those stories. This a fantastic event in that regard. So I'm going to open it up now to Q&A from our audience. I do have a couple questions that have already been put in the chat, and obviously, if anybody has any more, feel free to do so, or rather, they've been sent to me directly. So, and some of them we've addressed a little bit, but how beneficial is networking when trying to attain a professional position? I think we've all spoken to that a little bit, right? The importance of networking and securing professional opportunities. But the next one that I wanted to pose is, how did you balance school and your personal life when you were at the University of Baltimore? And anyone, this is going to be open forum. Any of you can take a stab at it if you would like to.
So I'll start. I worked full time. And I went to school at night, non-traditional, right? As I mentioned, my husband was a college professor at UB. So in the beginning, I would only schedule classes when he was working. So if he worked nights, I went to class. But I found the most important thing, and I will say I was in my 40s when I came back to school. So a little bit different, but I will tell you my biggest response is that you have to let people know what you're doing. People have to understand that you have a personal life, you have a possibly work, and you have a school life. And so for you to stand up and say, this is what's important to me, and no matter what it is in life, right? My school relationship is very important. And so I have to focus on that. And people are going to support you if you can stand up for what you believe in. And again, it goes back to who you are and what you want to accomplish. But if schoolwork is going back to UB was so important to me, then I made sure everybody knew it. And I let everybody know, hey, I'm taking a hard class. I'm taking math, which was algebra, which in 40 years I didn't have to take, right? But everybody I know knew when I took algebra, right? And people offered help. People just need to know where you stand. And again, we've all been through it. We all do it. But being honest about what's important to you, Your friends and your family are going to support you through no matter what. So be honest. Realize that some days it's going to be schoolwork over personal. Some days it's going to be, hey, I have to do homework. I can't go to Fells Point, right? But know that and make sure that what you believe in is what you stand for. And it's that way. If I have to take algebra and I'm going to have to study every single night for 4 hours, okay, then I can't go to Fells Point on Friday night. But know that it's temporary, because in 4 years you're walking across the stage, getting your diploma from Dr. Hartley and smiling all the way.
Related to that, when I decided to go back, and I had already been working, it was very deliberate because the place where I worked made it clear that promotion only came with a master's degree. Like you could only get so far in this career ladder without a master's degree. And so it was very much, I had to do this to move forward in my career. And I have to tell you, for 2 years, I did not see a single television episode of anything, and I didn't see a single movie for like 2 years. So we go to these trivia nights and somebody talks about some TV show and I have no idea what it was. And that's okay. Like, it's okay. I got promoted and I lose at trivia games. It's okay.
I would say you have to just have your priorities in order, be disciplined, have a schedule, and just, maintain things that you want to have in place. And when you talk about a personal life, it's different aspects of your personal life. Are you in a relationship? And does your partner understand the goals that you have for yourself, right? Um, how does your friends respond? They need to understand you going after something, and they can't be keep pulling at you talking about, let's go get some beers and play these games and stuff right now. That's not your space at the moment, right? You can get to that in a different space. So for me personally, when I was at UB, I had a really, 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 really strict schedule. And I didn't have time to really play around because I was working full time. I was going to school full time. And my mom had passed away. So I had to raise my youngest brother when he was 1 year old. So I didn't have time to really worry about um, what party or TV show or game and stuff like that. I had to make sure that I was getting my, my education, because I was going after something at a higher level. So bouncing from work straight to class, or from class straight to work, or the daycare center and things like that. And those are different aspects that some people, have to deal with. You got, students that come to school that might have a child. And one thing I will give, UB credit for was, during my time, because of my circumstance, like you said, Melissa, you gotta speak, communicate, and let individuals around you know what's going on. So for me, I didn't have a child biologically, but because my mom had passed and I, became a foster parent for my 1 year old brother, I was a parent overnight. And I was like a single parent overnight, right? So I went from being able to go to work, go to school, do all my stuff, and have my flexibility, to now I got work, I got school, and I have a 1 year old child that I'm trying to figure life out because my mom passed, right? So I just would say, it's your goal. What do you want? And how serious do you want it? How bad do you want it? How serious are you about your career? How serious are you about your life? How serious are you about the things that you feel like you want to go after? Because for me, it was imperative, and it was something that was extremely serious, and it was a high need and level of a desire and want for me to get higher level of education, outside of high school and elementary school and stuff like that. Because I'll just leave this last piece real quick, Daniel, if I have time. Um, when I mean, like, how bad do you want it? I am one of the young men that comes from Baltimore City Public Schools that they just passed through. I couldn't read, write, or count on a proficient grade level. I wasn't supposed to graduate high school. And just like they put that, they like put it out in the news recently that it's like 12 or 13 Baltimore City high schools, 0% of the students performed on a proficient level, right? Meaning if you in a 12th grade, most of them really only read and write and accounting on a 4th or 6th grade level. I was one of those students because what I came from, my community, my neighborhood, my parents had drug addictions, and the schools wasn't equipped to help me as a child. So when I first went to school, my first school was BCCC. Baltimore City Community College is a community college, is an associate's. So it'll take 2.5 years. Because I was so academically behind, it took me 6 years to get an associate's degree. 6 years. So I didn't get my foundation in high school, elementary, or middle school because the school systems failed me. And my parents, with their addiction, I didn't have the stability. So I wanted higher levels of education, though. So me playing and running the streets, it wasn't something that I knew was going to help me get that. So even before I got to UB, I knew I wanted something heavy. So that's why I took those. It took me 6 years to get my associates. So I tell people, even though I have a master's degree, that little one right there, let me see, that's my associates. That right there has a major impact on my life because it took 6 years to get that, right? So I was at UB 2.5, and my master's took about 2.5. But that associates took me 6. So, it's something that's heavy on my heart. So I just would encourage the students, go get it. Don't give up. Stay focused. Be disciplined. Lock in. Because if it's something that you really need and really want, you got to get to it. And if your friends don't understand that, they're not good friends. And if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, they need to support you and understand that and understand you want something bigger and you going after it.
I don't have anything to follow that. That was just fantastic. So thank you so much. I did have one other question that was just asked, which I can somewhat answer, but I would love to give people the chance to kind of talk to for themselves. Just how can you identify, or maybe how did you personally identify what career fit your personality and your future goals?
So I left the corporate world. And I will say part of it was my connections at University of Baltimore. At that time, and again, I was an older student. My husband was on the faculty. So there were a lot of people who made an impact on me at UB, and at different levels. So a lot of the administrative but also in the career center, and also in meeting people, program directors, right? So I had an amazing office job. I wasn't happy personally, and I didn't know where to go, right? I didn't know what classes to take. And when I went back to UB, and I can't remember what they're called now, but you took 2 classes back to back with the same people, and but I started talking to different people at UB and saying, hey, this is what I think I want to do. And as a matter of fact, it was President Boglamoni when I started there. And one day I was talking to his assistant and saying, I just don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I was in my 40s. So I think utilizing all the different areas at UB, I mean, at one point I thought I wanted to do criminal justice, right? But I think talking to different people, and because UB is so open in all the different colleges, I had no problem talking to people in the College of Arts and Sciences. I had no, I even talked to people at the law school. So I think knowing that every student at UB is struggling with this. Yes, there are a lot of people who come in and go, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be this and that. But as you educate yourself, but utilize the different programs at UB, utilize the different groups, utilize the library where you start talking to somebody else, even the librarians. Sorry, Pat, make an appointment with Pat, talk to her, but I really focused a lot on meeting with program directors, reading the UB course selection stuff, things like that. But open your mind, because what you imagine may not be what you really want. And so be open to that. This is the time that you can do it. And nobody's going to question it. Right. So if you go to, the program director in jurisprudence and say, this is what I think I want to be, but then turn around and go to criminal justice, nobody's going to question you. They're going to tell you what you want to know. They're going to give you the information you need to make it educated. And then there's certainly enough departments that can help you make that. And again, it's just by starting to saying, hey, tell me about your program. I'm interested.
I also think there is no one point at which it's very rare, actually. For most humans, it's very rare that somebody's like, oh no, I want to do this one thing and this is the career I want. And that's great if you have that, that's fabulous. But for most of us, you just kind of start doing things and then you meet people and you do more things. And then you're like, oh, I like that more. And it evolves. Careers evolve, and just like people. And so I think do those things that Melissa talked about. Yes, go. There's great resources here. But the other thing is to just go ahead and jump in and start working with people and see where it leads you.
I think I kind of addressed it a little bit earlier as well when I said for me, I bounced around, trying to figure out what I liked and where I felt like I fit, where I felt like I belonged, because I just knew I wanted to help. I knew I wanted to make a difference in my community. I knew I wanted to make a difference in my family and stuff like that, but I didn't really necessarily know how I wanted to do it or how to go by it. I just was trying to figure things out. So I just would encourage the students to look at yourself, look at your life. Who are you? What do you want to do? Like, what are you good at? What are your skills? What are your crafts? What do you think about? Because everything can be monetized. If you someone who paints, can be monetized. If you're someone you're a great writer, regardless if you write books or you write movie scripts or you write comic books, it can be monetized. If you're someone who loves plants, it can be monetized. If you work on cars, if you want to be a judge, a lawyer, a doctor, a HVAC technician, whatever your path is, whatever you're good at, if you're good with your hands, there's tons of careers and jobs and paths out there that work with your hands. If you're someone who types really fast or write really fast, it's careers and jobs and stuff out there. So my suggestion would be to, sometimes is just sit down, take a breath, look at yourself, look at your life. What are you good at? Like, what are your gifts? And sometimes what you're good at and what your gifts are can turn into a life-changing situation and you can monetize off of it. Sometimes when we're younger, we rush. And I say this because I work with students all day, every day. You rush to be an adult. You rush to want your own car. You rush to want your own apartment. You rush to wanting credit cards. You rush to getting all these bills. And then now while you're rushing, you building up debt and things that's going to force you to try to hurry up and pick a job because you got to pay off these things that you want. But I feel like sometimes we need to sit down with the younger students and tell them, you have time to think right now. Think about your life. Think about what you really want to do, who you really are, what you're good at, before you start building up all these things and then pick a career path. But to older students, I would say you still have time as well. Don't lock yourself into something that you're unhappy at. There's a lot of people who work in positions and jobs, they literally just feel miserable, right? But it's different careers and paths out here. So look at what you feel comfortable with and go after it. And that was me. I bounced around for a while, and two, I felt like I was in a space of where I belong. Where I'm at now, I know I belong here. I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know I'm good at it, and I don't feel like it's work while I'm doing it because this is something I love doing.
I'm going to piggyback on one thing, and you can always volunteer your time with alumni who run business, because I'm sure we all would step up and say, you know what, come hang out with us, get a feeling, and or we'll introduce you to what you think you might want to do. So lean on your UB family alumni too.
Feel like that is the perfect place for us to leave off right now, since I have not gotten any other questions at this point. First and foremost, Pat, Wesley, Melissa, thank you all so much for your time, for your incredible perspectives, for telling us your stories, for being guiding lights for the current UBAL students and other alums that that are looking for direction and looking for support in this regard. We truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we will definitely be in touch after this is over. To everyone who's in attendance, we will be downloading this Zoom recording, probably do some edits, and then we'll be sending it out to everyone who is in the Zoom records of attending this event. And if you have any questions, we definitely encourage you to potentially reach out to the Career Center. Our office is on the 3rd floor of the Student Center. And also I will put in the chat box our general email address just so that everyone has it. But in that regard, we are done for tonight. I will hope you all have a wonderful night. Marquia is going to stop the recording right now.